1985, FedEx was already the king of overnight delivery. They owned the market, they invented. And then Fred Smith looked at this Memphis superhub, a facility already processing over 1 million packages a night, and said, it's not big enough. Double it. Wall Street said he was overinvesting. Competitors said he was overextending. Smith wasn't overextending, he was overbuilding the future and locking every competitor out of it before they even knew that the war had started. Hello, I'm Todd Hagopian, the original Stagnation Assassin. Today, we're opening the vault on FedEx's Memphis Superhub capacity expansion of 1985, the moment that Fred Smith bet hundreds of millions of dollars that tomorrow's demand would justify today's investment. Was this a strategic slaughter or a stagnation suicide? Let's audit the operation. FedEx in 1985 gets a stagnation score of 2 out of 10, minimal corporate cancer. This was a company at the peak of its operational power, profitable, growing, dominant. Fred Smith had invented the hub and spoke model for overnight delivery, and Memphis was the neural center of the entire network. So why expand when you're already winning? Because Smith understood something that most executives don't. The time to build capacity is before you need it, not after. So let's look at the tactical audit. Fred Smith, executed in 1985, was a textbook deployment of the 3S method, which helps you determine how to optimize capacity. FedEx had already stabilized their core overnight delivery operation. Memphis was running like a Swiss watch. Planes landing, packages sorting, planes departing, all within a few-hour window every single night. The system worked. The foundation was solid. They had standardized their processes to the point where they could measure performance in minutes and seconds, not hours and days. Every conveyor belt, every sorting station, every loading dock operated on protocols that were documented, measured, and optimized. This level of standardized savagery is what allowed them to even contemplate scaling. And then Smith pulled the trigger on massive capital expenditures, new sorting facilities, new runways, new aircraft capacity. He wasn't building for 1985 demand. He was building for 1990 demand, 95 demand, 2000 demand. This is grandiose goal setting with a capital expenditure checkbook behind it. But here's the tactical genius that most people miss. This expansion wasn't just about handling more packages. It was about competitive calcification, making it physically impossible for anyone else to replicate what FedEx had built. The Memphis hub, geographic position, air traffic infrastructure, and operational scale created a barrier of entry that no competitor could overcome without spending a decade and billions of dollars trying. UPS eventually built their own hub in Louisville, but they were years behind. DHL tried to compete the US market and eventually retreated entirely. This is the Corellan method applied to logistics infrastructure, 600% force concentrated on a single point of strategic dominance. While competitors were building distributed networks, Smith was building a superweapon. So let's look at the hindsight homicide, the fatal flaw, domestic tunnel vision. Smith was so focused on dominating the US market through Memphis that FedEx was late to the international expansion. When globalization accelerated in the late 1980s and 1990s, DHL had already built an international network that FedEx had to spend billions acquiring and integrating. The 2016 acquisition of TNT Express for $4.8 billion and the subsequent integration disaster can be traced back to this original sin of domestic dependency. The profit parasite was fortress mentality, building an impregnable domestic castle while the global battlefield shifted around them. So what's the verdict? Fred Smith's Memphis expansion was a masterclass in preemptive capacity building. He invested when others were optimizing. He built when others were trimming, and he bet on the future, and the future paid him back 100 times over. Kill rating, 4 out of 5 kills. The domestic Mytopia cost him a full kill, but the core decision to massively overinvest in capacity before demand caught up was one of the most disciplined strategic moves in American logistics history. Now, if you're waiting to if you're waiting for demand to justify your capacity investment, you're already too late. Someone else is building that infrastructure right now. You need to head to toddhagopian.com and stagnationassassins.com for more stagnation tools. Pick up a copy of The Unfair Advantage, and as always, continue to declare war on stagnation with me right here.